everybody, this is Mark from AltCoin Buzz, and I want to thank all of you for leaving positive comments during Shaylin's news segments on the technical analysis of the charts. That's making the separate segment possible. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the coins that you've asked about and do a technical analysis on them looking at the charts. We'll also look at some of the tools that are used when it makes sense. We'll look at the news if there's anything that might be affecting the coin occasionally. And in a very short time, try and take a look at some of the coins that are moving and get an idea of where they're sitting at today. So let's get started. So I thought it might be good to start off with a little bit of framework to show you how I'm setting up the charts and a couple indicators that I use. I won't go through all the indicators on the other coins. I'll just kind of give you a summary of what I'm looking at overall because I use a number of indicators. So just in the interest of time, we won't go through one by one, but at least you'll get exposed to some of the things that I'm looking at. First of all, I'm drawing trend lines, and let's just start with drawing a trend line here so you can take a look at it. If we hit where the highs have been on Bitcoin since December, and we have quite a few confirmations on this line, you can see what we all knew, that we were in a bear trend, total down market, right? Now, when Bitcoin shot up the last couple of weeks, there were people saying, look, let's not get too excited down in here. We're still in a bear trend. Now, it looks like we might have turned that corner. There's a caveat to that I'll show you in a little bit, but you can see we clearly broken out of this trend line and we're on a different trajectory. So I'll remove that. So if we zoom in on where we're at right now, we've got two different kind of price action trend lines that we're dealing with. And if we look at the 1 hour chart, I'll show you how these came up. So when I'm looking at coins, I'm typically looking at them on a larger time frame because in my trading style, I'm looking for the big swings up and down. It gives me a lot more margin for error, if you will. I'm not trying to find the high spikes in an hour and the low spikes in an hour on a long-term coin that I'm holding. If I'm looking for an entry point, I might, but on a long-term spectrum, I'm looking at the big time frames, what you'll hear some people call higher time frames. But to get more information, I needed to look at the 1 hour just to see where these trend lines are going. Each one of these candles now, or hash marks, whatever you want to call them, we call them candles, represents now an hour. So on the other one, there were 8 of these in each one of the candles. And you can see as we draw this, we've got resistance up here, but our support is also basically in here on the top. And then we've got some resistance where that becomes resistance and then a support level down here. So we've got two trading areas that we're in this area, and then we might drop down into this zone, and then we come back up into this zone. So when we go back to our 8 hour chart, you can see how those lines, those don't change on this chart. I drew them on the 1 hour, but they transfer over to this 8 hour. So those are our trend, support, and resistance lines. And then in here, I've got some horizontal support and resistance lines that I'm paying attention to. And these were taken from the 1 hour chart as well. But the support line that I'm looking at is around $8,800. The resistance to that support line is around $8,900. If we break through this resistance level, my next resistance level that I'm looking at is around $9,100. And all of those are back in this area as well. So as I'm looking at this chart, and we'll get into the indicators in a minute, but as I'm looking at this chart, this is a very important time for us because we've been there before, not too long ago. And we rejected this area, this price area, and shot back down to $6,500. So this is a very critical time for Bitcoin to see if we can break out of this area and continue up this trajectory. So now I'm going to lay in some other information to try and help me get comfortable with where I think Bitcoin's going. One of the indicators that I use is an oscillator called the MACD. The MACD stands for Moving Average Convergence and Divergence. And so where on this scale do these lines converge and where do they diverge? I'm not going to go into the mathematics of how this oscillator is calculated, but what you should understand is just the basics of these moving averages here. You've got the orange line, which is called the signal, and then a faster moving average, which we use to see when that signal has been crossed over. The moving average is calculated up based upon how many of these hash marks or candles that we've told it to average out for us. Right now, this is set on the fast to a 9. So we take 9 of these candles and average out what those would be and then plot them on this line graphically. That plot keeps moving, so as we get another 8-hour candle, we'll factor that in and drop off the last candle and then plot it back down here again. When the blue crosses over the signal line, their fast crosses over the signal line, that means that kind of the short term, medium term price action is more to the negative side than it is to the positive side. When it crosses above the signal, when the fast crosses above the signal, then we've got more positive action going on in that price movement. We've got a zero line here. So on this oscillator, you've got a midpoint. These pink lines are the what they call the histogram, which is basically showing us the distance between these two lines right now. And as it gets closer to the zero line, we're getting closer to where that convergence might happen. Now, the way I look at these is when these convergences are happening above this mid-level, I don't get quite as worried about the price dropping, which is theoretically what's going to happen when this crosses over, right? Versus when it's below this halfway point. I'm a little more concerned about how strong that price action really is when it's below this midpoint. So that's how I use the MACD. The other indicator that I use is the DMI, the directional moving index. And this index gives me a positive directional moving index and a negative directional moving index. And so think about it as the green being the bulls and the reds being the bears. Who has control over this chart right now? And right now, the bulls have control over the chart. The white lines are an average of the two, and it shows me how strong their position is. So right now, the bulls have a very strong position on Bitcoin according to this indicator. So now that we have a little bit of framework to work with, let's take a look at one of the coins that you asked about. So one of the coins you asked to look at was Dash. Obviously on a bear trend. Now, the thing to point out here is that we're looking at Dash on a Bitcoin chart, not against the US dollar. We're looking at it against how it's performing to Bitcoin. The reason for that is because I cannot buy Dash directly. I cannot buy Dash with fiat. I can't use US dollars to buy this coin. At some point in time, if I want to get back into cash, I'm going to have to convert this over to Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever I purchase it with. Theoretically here, I bought it with Bitcoin, and I'm going to have to use that Bitcoin then to exchange it for my cash. So I want to see how it's performing against Bitcoin, because the dollar that I put in here is still worth $1. But once I get it converted over to Bitcoin, it could be less than or more than that. Hopefully that makes sense. So we've drawn our trend lines here. This is taken from the lower time frames. There's not a clear channel here. The channel really would have been in this area right now, but we've broken way through that. But we have found some resistance in here, and we found some resistance up here. So we'll use this as our general trend and channel. Our support levels are set at 0.05 Bitcoin right in here. Our next resistance level that we're going to look at, and you can see on this support line we had some resistance up against it here and acted as support back here. So that's what we're using as our support level right now. Our resistance level is set, you can see from where we bounced off of in here, at 0.06. So we're going to want to see if we can break through that. And then from there, if we break through that and even potentially come back down this trend line, we're going to be looking at a resistance level of 0.069 or close to 0.07. All the indicators on Dash look very positive right now. So that's Dash for you. So another coin that you guys asked us to look at was Blue. Now the difference here, you can see I'm not on TradingView, and the reason for that is because this coin is not being traded on some of the major exchanges yet, like Binance or Bittrex or someplace like that. And TradingView takes that data from the big exchanges, and that allows me to use that charting software. I don't have that availability with this coin, so I'm having to go to a different source. And I like using CoinGecko for this because it gives me some other information besides just looking at the chart like I would on CoinMarketCap. It's given me the total liquidity pool that's available, and obviously, that's important if I want to make an exchange, right? There's got to be sellers on one side if I'm trying to buy and vice versa. So I'm interested in what that total liquidity looks like. It'll also tell me the basics of the market cap and the trading volume. And then, of course, it gives me a chart. I've got it set up on a 60-day right now. And one of the things that you can see in here on the price is we have these big spikes on the graph that happen in a very short time period. So one of the things that I'm looking at on this coin is it in a pump and dump environment, right? Where people are pumping the coin value up so that you and I get involved in it, and then they pull out their profits before you and I can react. And on this coin, it looks like it could be subject to some of that going on. I can also kind of look at just the general trend of the coin and see what's happening. And then I just have to scroll over to try and get an average of kind of where this coin is at. So on this coin, we're floating around 19 to 21 cents, it looks like, roughly, barring these big spikes that are in the chart. Now, it doesn't have a lot of trading volume, and that scares me because it won't take a lot to affect these spikes in the coin. The other thing that I can do is I can go to a max on the chart and just see how long this coin's been around. So we're looking back at November, end of October, that this coin was established. And if I don't see this coin getting onto a major exchange or hear about it getting onto a major exchange, this liquidity doesn't move up, the development on the coin isn't going anywhere by the next, or call it this November, then I'm wondering if this is a project that I want to be involved in. Now on these small market cap coins, the risk and reward is very high, right? There's the possibility that it could get listed on an exchange, and the high on this coin has been as high as $2.20, and now we're sitting at roughly that 19-20 cent range. So could it get back up in here? Theoretically it could. So you have to look at these. I'm just giving you a tool that I use, and you have to make a determination for yourself. Is this a project that I believe in? Do I want to be involved in this coin? Am I getting involved in it to make a 10x, 100x type of a return? Well, if you are, then you could be waiting for a long time, right? On those lower time frames where you're seeing those huge spikes, is this a coin that's being subject to pump and dump? And then you take all those factors and you put them together and you make your own decision. So that's blue. In the interest of time, we'll do one more coin and then we'll wrap it up here. A lot of you asked about Bitcoin Cash, so we'll take a look at Bitcoin Cash on the chart real quick. We are looking at Bitcoin Cash on the USD chart because we can buy this with fiat. You can see this price action on the 8-hour chart just going basically straight up and vertical. And we're trading right in this narrow channel. So to get some support lines, we really have to go back into April to get us some support and resistance, beginning of March, end of April. Our support level then comes in at $11.95, call it $1,200 if you want to. Our next resistance level is going to come in around $15.51, which is where we saw it near the end of April. All the indicators on this coin are very bullish. And based upon the 8-hour chart, we're not having any pullbacks. So I'm looking at this to see how it reacts against that resistance line. If we go down to the 1-hour chart, you can see a little bit better where that trading is happening in that channel. We do have some pullbacks there. So it looks like this resistance line is going to hold up. And it won't be too long before we test this horizontal resistance level again at the 1551. So we'll wrap it up with Bitcoin Cash. Well, that'll do it for today, and please, I hope this was worth your time. Hit the like button if it was. Also, leave some coins below that you'd like us to review, and we'll try and get to those. Also, follow us on Twitter at AltCoinBuzzIO or Instagram at AltCoinBuzz. We're also around on Discord and Telegram. There's an all-new Altcoin Buzz podcast that you should tune into and check out. Hit the post notifications so that you know when we come out with some good content that's new. And we'll see you the next time that we review some new coins.